Hey guys, tonight we drift gently back into the ancient world, to a quiet corner of Greece where hills soften into valleys and time seems to stretch and yawn before settling down for the night. You find yourself standing in the Peloponnese at the end of the 3rd century BC, a place where stone paths glow faintly under moonlight and the air feels slower than anything you know today. So slow that you probably would not survive if you tried to rush through it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and your local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a slow step forward and feel the land beneath you, steady and warm even as evening settles in. The Peloponnese spreads out in calm layers of hills and coastlines, and the world around you belongs to the era of the Achaean League, when city-states tried, gently and imperfectly, to move together rather than alone. There is no urgency in the air, only the sense that tomorrow will arrive when it is ready, which feels like a very ancient and very healthy approach to life. You wander along a narrow road lined with low stone walls, and you imagine how these paths once connected towns that shared markets, festivals, and long discussions under shaded porticos. The Achaean League, at this moment in history, is less a loud political machine and more a quiet agreement between neighbors who prefer cooperation over chaos. You can almost hear the murmur of sandals on stone, soft voices exchanging news, and the distant sound of someone laughing at a joke it probably made more sense 2,000 years ago. As you continue, your thoughts begin to settle on a figure who moves gently through this landscape, not as a hero carved in marble, but as a thoughtful presence shaped by travel and patience. Aratus does not announce himself here, and instead, he blends into the rhythm of the land like another traveler pausing to watch the sky change colors. Some historians still debate whether Aratus's early travels shaped his later choices. You imagine him adjusting his cloak against the breeze and wondering why no one has invented pockets yet, which feels like a very reasonable historical concern. The light fades slowly, and you notice the simple homes scattered across the hillsides. Their walls built from local stone that holds the day's warmth long into the night. Inside these homes, people prepare for rest in ways that feel surprisingly thoughtful, laying out beds woven from cords and filled with fragrant leaves meant to keep insects away. Ancient carvings suggest that these leafy beds released gentle scents as people slept, and you imagine drifting off surrounded by herbal air, which honestly sounds more appealing than some modern mattresses that feel like arguments wrapped in fabric. You pause near one of these houses and sense how the night settles in without drama, as if darkness itself has learned to move quietly out of respect. Lamps glow softly through small openings, and the air carries hints of olive oil, warm bread, and dried herbs. You smile at the idea that people here probably ended their days with fewer notifications and more stars, which seems like an upgrade no one ever asked for, but everyone secretly wants. As you walk farther, the land opens toward the coast, and the distant sea breathes in a steady rhythm that feels almost meditative. The Peloponnese at this time is connected by shared hopes more than firm guarantees, and the Achaean League exists as a careful balance rather than a fixed structure. You sense how this balance depends on people like Aratus, who move between cities with measured steps and thoughtful silences, listening more than speaking. The night air cools, and you become aware of how sound travels differently now, softer and rounder, as if the world itself is padding its footsteps. Crickets provide a steady background chorus, and somewhere far off, a dog settles into sleep with a contented sigh. You realize that even in ancient Greece, the soundtrack of evening probably included familiar comforts, along with the occasional mystery noise that everyone agreed to ignore. You follow a path that curves gently uphill, and from this quiet vantage point, you see the scattered lights of towns that make up the Achaean League. Each light represents a place with its own customs and concerns, yet all of them share this same sky and this same unhurried night. You feel how unity here is less about force and more about shared habits, like agreeing on the best time to eat or the least windy place to sit. Your thoughts return to Aratus, who moves through these spaces with the calm focus of someone who understands both the promise and the fragility of cooperation. He is not rushing toward destiny, and instead he seems content to walk alongside it, occasionally glancing at the horizon. You imagine him stopping to rest against a stone wall, listening to the night, and briefly wondering if the stars have always been this bright, or if he is just paying better attention tonight. The sky above you deepens into a rich blue scattered with quiet points of light, and you feel how ancient people used these stars not only for navigation, but for comfort. Time feels expansive here, as if the night stretches wide enough to hold every thought you forgot to think during the day. You take a deep breath and notice how your shoulders soften, which suggests that relaxation has been very patiently waiting for you to catch up. You continue onward, letting the gentle world of ancient Greece guide your pace. The Peloponnese remains calm and receptive, and the early presence of Aratus feels like a thread woven carefully into a much larger tapestry. Nothing demands your attention, and nothing pulls you forward too quickly, which feels like the perfect way to begin a long and restful journey through history, especially one that understands the value of going slow. You arrive at Sicyon as morning unfolds gently, and the town greets the day without hurry, as if dawn itself has learned to tiptoe here. The light settles over tiled roofs and pale stone walls, warming them slowly rather than all at once. This is the place Aratus returns to after years of moving between city-states, and you feel how familiar ground carries a special calm that even long journeys cannot erase, much like finally sitting down after pretending you were not tired. You walk along a narrow street where smooth stones remember countless footsteps, and you imagine Aratus moving through these same spaces with an unspoken sense of recognition. His return to Sicyon marks a quiet moment in history, recorded simply as a homecoming after political wandering, yet the emotional weight feels heavier than any inscription. The town does not celebrate loudly, and instead it offers something far more generous, which is peace, along with the reassuring sense that no one expects you to achieve anything remarkable before breakfast, a standard that feels refreshingly humane. The houses here rest close together, their pale walls quietly sharing the soft morning air that drifts in from the surrounding countryside. You notice how doors open slowly, never all at once, allowing light to enter like a considerate guest who knows better than to arrive loudly. Sicyon seems practiced in this gentle rhythm, and you sense that. Aratus, returning after years of movement between city-states, would have felt this same calm welcome even if someone politely asked him to help lift something far heavier than expected. You wander past small courtyards where clay jars stand in patient rows, each one shaped by hands that valued usefulness over perfection. The faint scent of olives, figs, and crushed herbs lingers in the air, blending into something comforting and familiar. These spaces speak softly of daily routines that rarely change, even while political discussions unfold beyond the hills. The town appears to have made a quiet agreement with itself that life should move slowly enough for reflection, long walks, and the occasional afternoon nap, which feels like a civic policy modern cities abandon too quickly. As you continue, your footsteps echo gently against stone paths worn smooth by generations. Somewhere nearby, water is being drawn, and the sound carries an unexpected depth. It resonates low and steady, almost like a distant voice humming without words. Some ancient houses in Sicyon were built over underground wells that produced these soft echoes when water was poured, a feature noted in fragments of old records and never fully explained. You pause, listening as the sound rises and fades, filling the space with calm vibration. For a moment, it feels as though the town itself is breathing. You half expect the well to offer quiet advice about patience or balance, though it wisely limits itself to soothing acoustics instead. The effect is deeply calming, like background music chosen by history itself. Standing there, you sense how this town shaped Aratus just as much as he later shaped its fate. Sicyon does not rush its people. It teaches them gently how to listen, how to wait, and how to return home without fanfare, which is a lesson that still feels surprisingly useful today. You picture Aratus pausing at one of these wells, listening to the sound as it fills the morning air, and perhaps feeling grounded by this familiar oddity. The echo does not rush, and neither does he, as if both water and man understand the value of patience. You smile at the thought that even ancient plumbing had its own personality, which feels oddly reassuring in a world that often takes itself too seriously. The town square comes into view, calm and orderly, with stone benches warmed by the rising sun. This is where people gather not only to exchange goods, but to share stories that unfold slowly, like conversations meant to last all morning. Aratus' return to Sicyon places him back into this quiet network of shared space and shared memory, where reputation matters less than consistency, and where showing up regularly counts as a major achievement. You sit for a while and watch the shadows gently pull back as the sun climbs higher into the sky, noticing how the town seems to stretch itself awake rather than suddenly stir. Sicyon does not hurry into the day, and you feel quietly invited to follow its example, allowing your thoughts to drift without purpose or urgency. It feels like the kind of morning where even important decisions wait patiently in line, which sounds like a far kinder scheduling system than most modern calendars ever manage. Beyond the open square, small gardens unfold behind low stone walls, arranged with an unspoken sense of order. You notice fig trees offering wide leaves for shade, and modest patches of herbs carefully tended with hands that understand repetition and patience. These gardens speak of continuity rather than ambition, of people planting not only for themselves, but for seasons they may never personally enjoy, a habit that feels both practical and quietly hopeful. You imagine Aratus walking these same paths, passing these gardens in thoughtful silence. He would have understood that leadership often grows from places like this, rooted in ordinary routines and quiet responsibility rather than loud declarations. The connection feels clear without needing explanation, even if the gardening metaphors occasionally risk becoming too enthusiastic. The air remains calm, carrying soft birdsong and the faint scent of soil, warming in the sun. You breathe slowly, matching the pace of the town, and sense how Sicyon teaches patience simply by existing. It offers no instructions, no demands, only the steady reassurance that time moves best when it is allowed to move gently. As the morning deepens, the soft hum of the town continues, blending voices, footsteps, and the occasional echoing well into a soundscape that feels almost intentional. Sicyon holds Aratus gently, offering him a place to stand still before moving forward again. You feel how this calm foundation supports everything that follows, and you allow yourself to rest in it too, appreciating a town that understands the power of starting the day slowly, preferably with water that sings back. You move onward from Sicyon into the wider rhythm of the Achaean League, and the transition feels less like crossing a border and more like stepping into a slightly larger room with the same familiar air. Nothing announces itself loudly, and there are no banners flapping or trumpets insisting on attention. Instead, the League reveals itself through shared habits, well-used paths, and a quiet agreement that cooperation does not need to raise its voice to be effective. As you walk, the land seems to encourage movement that is thoughtful rather than forceful. Paths invite strolling instead of marching, and the ground feels forgiving beneath your steps. You sense that this landscape has shaped the people who live within it, teaching them that progress often comes from steady repetition rather than sudden motion. It feels like a place where walking side by side matters more than getting ahead. You follow a route that links towns like beads on a string, each settlement distinct, yet gently connected through routine exchange. Merchants guide carts that creak softly, as if mindful of the quiet, while farmers move with measured steps shaped by long familiarity with these roads. Messengers pass without urgency, carrying news that rarely demands panic, and you notice how information here travels with patience instead of drama. This is the daily life of the Achaean League, where governance blends seamlessly into ordinary movement. Decisions grow slowly, like crops that refuse to be rushed, and even important matters seem content to wait until everyone has eaten and found a comfortable place to sit. You sense that authority here prefers to blend into the background, allowing daily life to remain uninterrupted. As you continue, you become aware of Aratus moving within this network, not as a distant figure elevated above others, but as someone shaped by repeated trust. He has elected strategos more than once, and the repetition feels less like ambition and more like reliability. Being chosen again suggests steadiness, like being asked to care for something valuable because you handled it gently before, which feels like a very old and very human form of praise. You imagine gatherings where representatives arrive calmly, greeting one another without ceremony. They take their places under open skies or shaded colonnades, and discussions unfold slowly, carried by voices that do not compete for dominance. The Achaean League does not rush its conversations, and patience here feels like a shared value rather than a strategic delay. In these spaces, Aratus listens more than he speaks, and you sense that his influence grows quietly through attention rather than assertion. Leadership in this world seems less about directing and more about absorbing, like soil taking in rain. You notice how comfort settles into these meetings, and how familiarity replaces formality, much like a group chat that remains useful because no one insists on being the loudest voice. As you drift through these scenes, movement across the League feels guided more by geography than by command. Roads follow valleys and curve around hills, respecting the land instead of challenging it. You sense that the people who planned these routes preferred cooperation with nature, and that this preference echoes in the League's political habits as well. Ancient mapmakers reflected this gentleness in their work, sometimes marking mountains not with heavy symbols, but with small stars. The choice feels intentional, as if someone wanted the map to feel light in the hands, easy on the eyes. These stars suggest elevation without intimidation, offering guidance rather than insistence. This detail gives you pause, and you imagine a careful hand placing star-like marks across a parchment. Perhaps the mapmaker hoped the viewer would feel invited to travel rather than warned away. You smile at the idea that even in ancient times, someone worried about visual clutter, quietly proving that design anxiety is older than most modern inventions. You walk alongside a small group of travelers and notice how conversation flows without sharp edges. Stories are shared more than once, each retelling softer and more reflective than the last. News spreads through familiarity rather than shock, and repetition here feels comforting instead of tedious. This steady circulation of information keeps the League connected, and you sense how Aratus's repeated leadership fits naturally into this pattern. Stability grows from familiarity, and trust strengthens through recognition. Nothing feels rushed, and nothing feels forced, which makes the structure seem surprisingly durable. The day unfolds slowly as you pass through fields and low hills, and the sky remains wide and patient above you. People pause often, leaning against stone walls or resting beneath trees. These pauses feel intentional, as if rest itself is part of the League's unspoken agreement. In these moments, the League exists not as an institution, but as a shared willingness to continue together. Even when paths wander, there is comfort in knowing that everyone is moving at roughly the same pace. You feel how this shared rhythm reduces anxiety, allowing thought to drift without urgency. You imagine Aratus traveling between towns, his pace unhurried and his presence reassuring. Being strategos here does not require constant display, and instead rewards attentiveness and endurance. Leadership seems to involve a great deal of listening and an impressive amount of walking, which sounds tiring but at least avoids awkward podiums. As evening approaches, the air cools and sounds soften across the land. Fires begin to glow, meals are shared, and conversations naturally slow as rest approaches. The League's activity gently contracts, mirroring the quiet settling of the day itself. You sense how the structure of the Achaean League reflects this daily rhythm, expanding with light and retreating with darkness. It never forces itself beyond what feels sustainable, and that restraint feels wise. Nothing demands urgency when rest is clearly approaching. You settle into this understanding, allowing your thoughts to gently fall into step with the calm pace around you. As if your mind has finally found a rhythm, it does not feel tempted to rush. The repeated elections of Aratus no longer feel like political events, and instead resemble moments of collective reassurance. The League continues forward on gentle footsteps, guided by trust, habit, and the comforting belief that not everything needs to be rushed, especially when everyone seems content to walk together. You sense a subtle shift in the air as the paths widen and conversations soften into careful consideration, and the Achaean League begins to look gently beyond its familiar hills. The political atmosphere remains calm, like a lake at dawn that reflects more than it reveals. In this unhurried moment, Aratus considers cooperation with Macedon, not as a daring leap, but as a measured step taken with steady breathing and relaxed shoulders. The thought settles slowly, without urgency, as if it knows there is plenty of time. You imagine Aratus moving through shaded courtyards, where the sound of sandals echoes softly against worn stone, each step measured and unhurried. His pace remains light, yet his thoughts carry a gentle weight, the kind that settles rather than presses. The choice to work with King Antigonus III Dusan does not arrive through ceremony or sharp debate, and instead it develops slowly, shaped by familiarity and quiet observation over time. This cooperation grows through repeated encounters, small moments of shared presence that gradually form trust without demanding attention. It feels practical, grounded in necessity, yet it also carries a personal tone, shaped by mutual awareness rather than obligation. You think of it as borrowing a neighbor's ladder, using it carefully, and remembering exactly where it came from so it can be returned without fuss. There is comfort in this image because it suggests respect without drama and partnership without display. As you walk beside this moment, you feel how Macedon exists just beyond the League's usual rhythm, close enough to feel familiar, yet distant enough to remain slightly uncertain. Antigonus III Dusan carries himself with a calm authority that does not demand attention, and his reputation rests on patience rather than spectacle. You picture him standing beneath open skies, still and observant, appearing more like part of the landscape than a ruler, which feels like a rare political talent and an even rarer personality trait. You follow a quiet road leading toward Macedon, and the stones beneath your feet feel smoother here, worn down by generations of thoughtful travel. These roads do not rush anyone forward, and instead they encourage steady movement and frequent pauses. Meetings along the way take place without raised voices, and agreements formed through shared silences as much as spoken words. Aratus approaches this alliance with care, aware that balance often depends on how gently one places weight, similar to navigating a dark room without stepping on a sleeping cat. As evening settles, moonlight spills across open spaces where leaders once paused to consider their choices. The air cools gradually, and sounds soften until even footsteps seem hesitant to interrupt the night. It is said that Antigonus's cloak shifted color beneath the moon, appearing deeper or lighter, depending on the angle of the light, a detail that no one fully explained. You imagine the fabric catching silver tones, and you smile at the thought that even ancient rulers had fashioned moments that quietly confused their observers. This visual detail lingers in your thoughts, not because it demands explanation, but because it adds softness to an otherwise serious world. The alliance between Aratus and Antigonus forms under skies like this, where clarity comes slowly and certainty remains flexible. Some historians still debate whether this partnership was practical or emotional, and the question itself feels gentle rather than urgent. You find comfort in knowing that uncertainty has always accompanied thoughtful decision-making, even when history later pretends everything was obvious. You picture discussions unfolding in calm chambers where voices remain low and measured, and where listening carries more weight than speaking. Lamps flicker softly, and shadows move lazily along the walls, as if participating in the conversation through quiet observation. The alliance does not feel rushed, and instead settles into place like a carefully chosen stone supporting a larger structure. Aratus understands that cooperation here requires trust built over time, which feels reassuringly familiar and pleasantly unflashy. As you drift through these scenes, you notice how both sides seem aware of the delicate nature of their agreement. There is no triumph in the air, only a shared willingness to move forward without disrupting the calm balance they value. The world continues its steady rhythm, and even political decisions seem to respect the hour, as if checking a clock before proceeding. You sense that patience acts as an unspoken rule, gently enforced by habit rather than authority. The moon remains overhead, and its steady light seems to soften the edges of every thought that passes through your mind. Under this gentle glow, you sense how the alliance does not depend on dramatic gestures or loud promises, and instead rests on a quiet understanding that shared challenges are lighter when carried together. Nothing here feels rushed or theatrical, and that calm absence of spectacle makes the agreement feel grounded and real. This cooperation feels almost domestic in its simplicity, like calmly agreeing to split daily chores rather than arguing about who caused the mess in the first place. There is comfort in that image because it suggests responsibility without blame and effort without resentment. You notice how this kind of partnership feels easier to trust, precisely because it avoids excess emotion. It is cooperation stripped of drama, settled into place through patience and mutual recognition, and that quiet realism gives it a reassuring sense of durability. You walk on, feeling how this partnership settles into the larger story without demanding attention. The Achaean League continues its routines, markets open and close, roads fill and empty, and life proceeds at a pace that favors continuity. Macedon remains a steady presence rather than a looming force, and Aratus moves between these worlds with careful steps. His leadership here feels less like command and more like maintenance, quietly keeping things from wobbling. As night deepens, you allow the image of the moonlit cloak to drift gently through your thoughts, unresolved and unbothered. The alliance stands quietly in place, supported by patience, mutual respect, and a shared preference for stability over noise. You breathe slowly, feeling your shoulders relax as the story continues without urgency. In this calm partnership, you sense that even political choices can exist without disturbing the peaceful flow of the night, and that realization feels like a small, unexpected comfort. You arrive at Corinth as a gentle wind moves through the city, carrying the soft mingling scents of salt from the nearby sea and warm stone that has rested in the sun all morning. The air feels open and unhurried, shaped by Corinth's place between land and water, as if the city itself has learned the art of slow breathing. Nothing here seems to rush, and even the light settles gently on walls and pathways. In this calm atmosphere, Corinth's joining of the Achaean League unfolds without announcement or display, recorded as a steady step that blends quietly into the rhythm of daily life. You walk along broad paths worn smooth by countless footsteps, and the stone beneath your feet seems to hold memories of routine rather than spectacle. These pathways once supported traders who paused to rest, loosen straps, and carefully shift the weight of their loads, and the space still feels patient and accommodating. Nothing urges you to move faster, and the ground itself seems content to support slow, steady progress. The rhythm of movement here feels practiced, shaped by repetition rather than urgency. As you continue, you notice how the city welcomes presence without disruption. People pass through without drawing attention to themselves, and the environment adjusts quietly, as if hospitality is built into the stone. Corinth feels comfortable receiving others, offering room without pressure and connection without demand. The city does not rush to prove its importance or declare its value, and instead it offers continuity, a calm assurance that belonging does not require performance or display. This steady acceptance feels grounding, and you move forward with the sense that here, simply being present is more than enough. As you continue, you sense how easily the city settles into the larger structure of the League. There is no strain or adjustment, only a subtle alignment, like a chair placed carefully at a familiar table. It fits without scraping the floor, neither crowding nor standing apart. This ease feels intentional, as though Corinth understands that strength can arrive softly. You move forward with relaxed steps, comforted by the thought that unity here grows through calm acceptance rather than force, and that such quiet belonging often lasts the longest. As you continue, the architecture begins to draw your attention, not through overwhelming scale, but through subtle intention. Stone columns rise around you in calm, measured lines that feel reassuring to the eye. You learn that these columns were carved with a slight curve, a deliberate adjustment meant to appear perfectly straight when viewed from a distance. This ancient visual illusion reflects a thoughtful understanding of human perception, and you smile gently at the realization that people have always worked quietly to accommodate the way others see the world. Passing beneath these columns, you notice how the space feels balanced, inviting your steps to slow and your thoughts to relax. There is no pressure to look quickly or move on, and the gentle curve of stone mirrors the soft arc of the sky above. You wonder if Corinth's builders knew they were creating a form of architectural kindness, or if they simply wanted their work to age gracefully without appearing weary. Either way, the result feels considerate, like a structure that does not ask too much of the people beneath it. The breeze continues to travel through the city, lifting the edges of fabric and carrying distant sounds from courtyards and shaded rooms. Voices blend into a low, steady hum that feels comforting rather than demanding, like background music that knows when to stay quiet. Corinth's entry into the Achaean League does not interrupt these sounds, and instead it feels like another layer, added gently to an already complete melody. Nothing is drowned out, and nothing insists on being louder than it needs to be. You imagine Aratus walking along these same paths, his steps unhurried, his attention resting lightly on the details around him. He observes Corinth with quiet appreciation rather than judgment, noticing how the city balances openness with stability in a way that feels effortless. Its daily rhythms align naturally with the steady pace of the League, requiring no adjustment or correction. Corinth's inclusion strengthens the Achaean League, yet the moment feels almost domestic in tone, like welcoming a neighbor who already understands the unspoken rules of the household. There is no need for instruction or explanation here, only a shared awareness of how things work best. Cooperation unfolds without strain, guided by mutual respect and an instinctive sense of timing. You sense how this ease creates trust, allowing unity to grow gently, rather than being forced, and that quiet alignment feels deeply reassuring. You pause near an open space where the wind moves freely, circulating between buildings in a way that feels intentional. The city seems designed to breathe, guiding both air and attention through gentle curves rather than sharp angles. Standing here, you feel unexpectedly soothed, as if the environment itself encourages calm thinking. You think about how modern spaces sometimes forget this, creating places that feel rushed even when nothing is happening, and Corinth's calm presence feels like a thoughtful counterexample. As afternoon light begins to soften, shadows stretch lazily across stone surfaces, and the city settles further into itself. The presence of the Achaean League is felt not through banners or proclamations, but through quiet agreements and shared expectations. Corinth accepts this arrangement with ease, as though it has long understood that strength does not need constant display. You sense the lead growing not through force, but through gentle additions that reinforce the whole without demanding alteration or strain. You continue walking, letting the steady breeze guide your thoughts in slow, looping patterns. The curved columns remain behind you, yet their quiet lesson lingers, reminding you that what appears straight and simple often relies on subtle adjustment. Corinth stands as part of the League now, grounded in stone, patience, and thoughtful design. You move onward with an easy calm, feeling as though the city has quietly shown you how to exist comfortably within something larger. Balance comes without effort, and belonging feels natural, unforced, and free of any sense of strain. You find yourself at the edge of the Peloponnese as afternoon leans gently toward evening, and the pace of the world slows in a way that feels natural and unforced, much like a kettle warming patiently over a low flame. The light softens across the land, stretching shadows rather than sharpening them, and people move with deliberate ease. They gather small bundles of dried leaves and wild flowers, their movements calm and practiced, preparing simple herbal teas that quietly mark the passage of time rather than measure it. This quiet routine continues even as relations between Sparta and the Achaean League grow slightly tense, a background concern that exists without demanding attention. The tension does not announce itself loudly, and instead it lingers like distant weather, noted but not feared. Here it is handled with the same steady patience as steeping herbs, because people understand that rushing rarely improves flavor or outcomes. You sense that calm has become a skill, practiced daily in small, repeatable actions. You step into a modest courtyard where smooth stones retain the day's warmth, and a clay pot rests nearby, waiting. As water begins to heat, the scent of wildflowers rises softly with the first traces of steam. Records from this region speak of herbal teas made from native blossoms, gathered not for ceremony or prestige, but for comfort and balance. These brews feel practical and intimate, chosen for how they settle the body and quiet the mind, rather than how impressive they sound when described. You imagine these mixtures offering subtle flavors that unfold slowly, never insisting on attention. There is a faint bitterness softened by floral notes, and a warmth that spreads without urgency. You suspect these blends were selected as much for mood as for taste, an early and intuitive understanding of self-care. It feels reassuring to realize that even in ancient times, people recognized the value of tending gently to themselves, even if they did not use modern vocabulary to describe it. As the water warms, conversations remain low and unhurried, drifting through the courtyard like the steam itself. People speak of the day's work, the state of the fields, and the subtle changes in the weather. Occasionally, the topic of Sparta surfaces, mentioned carefully and without sharp edges. The tension exists, but it stays polite, like an awkward pause that everyone collectively agrees not to extend. You smile at how calmly uncertainty is handled here, as though political strain is simply another reason to pour tea more slowly. You sit on a low stone bench and watch as cups are filled with careful attention, each pour measured and thoughtful. No one rushes to be first, and no one worries about being last. The act of pouring feels almost meditative, grounding everyone in the present moment. You imagine Aratus in moments like these, listening more than he speaks, letting everyday rhythms carry on undisturbed, while larger concerns linger at the edges, acknowledged quietly without urgency, held in balance by patience and the comfort of familiar routines. Even as relations with Sparta tighten, these quiet gatherings remain unchanged. They suggest that daily life rarely waits for politics to resolve themselves, and that waiting too long would mean missing the evening entirely. You find this perspective comforting and perhaps a little wise. The world continues to offer warmth, conversation, and rest, regardless of unresolved tensions, and people here seem determined not to skip those comforts. The air cools gradually as evening approaches, and someone adjusts the fire beneath the pot with practiced ease. The heat remains steady rather than intense, enough to maintain warmth without agitation. This careful balance mirrors the larger situation between Sparta and the Achaean League, where firmness and restraint exist side by side. You sense that people here understand when to add fuel and when to let things settle, a skill that feels ancient and surprisingly useful. You notice how the teacups warm your hands, grounding you fully in the present moment. Around you, people pause between sips, allowing silence to stretch comfortably without filling it out of habit. The mild tension with Sparta lingers at the edge of awareness, acknowledged but not indulged. You think about how many modern discussions might benefit from shared drinks and intentional pauses, though you suspect that spilling tea on important documents could complicate meetings. As twilight deepens, the sky darkens gradually, and stars begin to appear one by one, unhurried and precise. The warmth of the tea contrasts gently with the cooling air, creating a sense of balance that feels deeply reassuring. The Peloponnese stretches quietly around you, expansive and calm, even as subtle political pressures press in from beyond the hills. You realize that this balance between concern and comfort defines much of life here. You imagine the wildflowers used in these brews growing quietly along paths and hillsides, unnoticed and undisturbed. They thrive regardless of alliances or rivalries, offering their gentle properties to anyone willing to gather them with care. There is comfort in this quiet continuity, in knowing that some things remain generous and steady, no matter how human arrangements shift. You briefly wonder if the flowers would prefer to be admired rather than boiled, which feels like a fair question from a botanical perspective. As cups empty and are refilled at a gentler pace, conversation fades naturally into quiet. People lean against cool stone walls, listening as evening settles around them. Crickets begin their steady song, and the fire answers with a soft, unhurried crackle, content to offer warmth without asking to be noticed. The tension with Sparta remains unresolved, yet it feels distant now, softened by warmth, shared presence, and the understanding that not everything needs to be solved before nightfall. As darkness settles fully, cups are set aside, and the fire is allowed to fade naturally. Conversations drift into contented silence, the kind that feels complete rather than empty. You breathe slowly, feeling calm settle into your body with each breath. You carry forward the image of tea, prepared with care at the edge of the Peloponnese, where even uneasy moments are met with patience, balance, and a very good excuse to sit down and rest for a while. You step quietly into the Spartan night, where lantern light settles in gentle pools along stone paths, and the air carries a calm, deliberate coolness. Darkness here does not feel empty or uneasy. Instead, it feels purposeful, as though the city listens more carefully once daylight fades. Sparta after sunset is not tense but attentive, a place that treats silence as something useful rather than something to fill. In these hours, Cleomenes III begins to appear more clearly in the record, not through bold proclamations or sudden change, but through small, noticeable adjustments in daily rhythm. His presence is sensed rather than announced, fitting a city that values restraint as strength. You pass low buildings whose thick stone walls still release the day's stored warmth, offering quiet comfort against the cooling air. Lanterns sway lightly above doorways in narrow streets, their movement controlled and unhurried. Cleomenes III enters this landscape without noise, a king marked by attention rather than applause. You imagine his steps measured and familiar, blending into the night like someone who knows every corner by memory. The lanterns themselves soften the space, their covered flames reducing glare and spreading light evenly. Nothing demands your gaze. Sparta at night feels practical and reflective, and leadership follows that same tone. Cleomenes III is observed without fuss, acknowledged without interruption. There are no crowds or murmurs of excitement, only a steady calm that reveals a culture comfortable with patience and quietly resistant to unnecessary display. As you continue, you notice small groups of soldiers resting along the streets or near open courtyards. Their equipment is arranged with careful symmetry, shields leaned at consistent angles, spears placed where they will not obstruct movement. Ancient accounts mention leather cords used by Spartan soldiers, braided tightly for durability and control. When moved, these cords reportedly produced a faint, whistling sound, subtle enough to be almost imagined. You listen closely and picture the sound blending into the night like wind moving through leaves, though you suspect it might startle a squirrel with poor situational awareness. You pause and listen more carefully. The sound, when it appears, resembles a forest at dusk, layered and gentle rather than sharp or alarming. These chords were practical tools, but their unintended music adds a quiet texture to the Spartan night. You think about how often background sounds become meaningful only through repetition, like the hum of a household appliance that feels insignificant until it stops. It is a surprisingly profound lesson in attention, and one that Sparta seems to have internalized long before anyone thought to write about mindfulness. Cleomenes III's presence influences the city without disturbing its calm. He appears in courtyards, near training grounds, and along familiar pathways, always observed from a respectful distance. No one crowds him, yet no one ignores him either. You sense that leadership here relies less on speeches and more on consistency. The king's quiet visibility reassures rather than excites, offering stability instead of spectacle. It feels like a management style built on trust and repetition, something modern offices might experiment with if they were less fond of motivational posters. The night air carries faint scents of oil, leather, and stone. Lantern light reflects softly off shields resting against walls, creating gentle patterns that shift as the flames move. The braided cords on soldiers' equipment shift slightly as people adjust their positions, producing that soft whispering sound again. You imagine how comforting this familiar noise must be to those who live here, a kind of auditory anchor signaling that everything is as it should be. It is almost like white noise before sleep, except historically accurate and significantly more leather-based. You find a place to sit near a low wall and watch the slow movement of light and shadow. Cleomenes III passes nearby at an unhurried pace, acknowledged with small nods rather than formal gestures. No one stops what they are doing. The city continues its evening rhythm uninterrupted, suggesting that leadership here integrates into daily life rather than standing apart from it. You appreciate how calm authority can feel when it does not insist on being noticed, and you wonder how many conflicts might soften if more leaders practiced this kind of quiet presence. As the night deepens, the lanterns burn steadily, their flames protected from wind by careful design. The Spartan streets remain calm and navigable, and the soft sounds of movement blend into a consistent background. The leather cords whisper again as someone shifts position, and the sound feels intentional, even if it was never planned. You realize that this soundscape encourages awareness without alarm, keeping people alert but relaxed. It feels like an ancient approach to mindfulness, minus the app subscription and daily reminders. You breathe slowly, matching your pace to the city's rhythm. The cool air fills your lungs without effort, and the steady environment invites your thoughts to settle. Cleomenes III's appearance marks a chapter in Sparta's story, yet tonight it feels like just another evening unfolding naturally. History here does not announce itself loudly. It moves quietly, shaped by presence rather than confrontation, and by routines that hold meaning precisely because they are repeated. You continue walking, noticing how even the shadows seem orderly, falling in predictable patterns that guide rather than confuse. Sparta at night does not overwhelm the senses. Instead, it offers clarity through simplicity. The city feels like it has been designed to support focus, rest, and readiness all at once. Cleomenes III fits into this environment not as a disruption, but as a reinforcement, another steady element in a carefully balanced system. You linger a little longer, allowing the calm to settle completely. Lanterns glow with patient light, cords whisper softly, and distant footsteps echo without urgency. The city rests in balanced stillness, neither asleep nor fully awake, offering no pressure to move on, only a gentle invitation to remain present. If nights had personalities, this one would kindly suggest slowing down and leaving some moments unfilled. When you finally turn to leave, you carry the sense of a city that understands itself. Sparta at night does not need to prove anything. It listens, observes, and continues, with Cleomenes 3 woven quietly into its rhythm, reminding you that some histories reveal themselves best through stillness rather than spectacle. You begin this journey at first light, stepping onto the stone roads that stretch quietly north toward Macedon. The path beneath your feet feels steady and unhurried, shaped by generations who valued careful movement over rush. Each stone seems to carry the memory of countless travelers before you, their steps settling into the rhythm of a slow, deliberate pace. Aratus once moved along these same roads, seeking the support of King Philip V. His decision unfolded not with haste or spectacle, but with the calm attentiveness of someone choosing the smoothest, most reliable route rather than the fastest. There is a quiet deliberation here, a sense that the journey itself matters as much as the destination. The road seems almost to guide your movement. Gentle inclines and subtle curves reflect the care of ancient engineers who adjusted the stones to reduce strain on both animals and wheeled vehicles. Each slope allows carts to roll with ease, and every bend invites steady footing. You sense the thoughtfulness in these choices, appreciating that even in antiquity, someone considered comfort and practicality. The road feels like a patient teacher, showing that movement can be both efficient and gentle, that travel need not be harsh or hurried. As you continue, the countryside unfurls into soft hills and quiet valleys, where the morning air carries only the faint rustle of grass and the distant call of birds. Though Aratus's journey carries the weight of political intention, the land itself seems indifferent to ambition. Here, silence encourages reflection. Long stretches of road offer moments for thoughts to wander freely, where contemplation can flow alongside each step. In this space, the act of walking becomes a meditation, and the journey toward Macedon feels guided not by urgency, but by the steady, patient rhythm of the landscape itself. You pass weathered markers, their inscriptions softened by centuries, yet still quietly guiding travelers who follow these ancient paths. Each stone seems to hum with history, a subtle reminder that the roads were crafted not only for passage, but for endurance. The gentle slopes reveal an understanding of balance and momentum, showing that those who built them considered comfort, effort, and rhythm in equal measure. Walking here, you can sense the difference between these deliberate ways and the rushed, noisy thoroughfares of the modern world, where speed often outweighs thoughtfulness. For a moment, you imagine a society in which traffic moves as patiently as these old roads, where every journey unfolds at a pace that allows reflection, conversation, and awareness of the landscape. It feels like a delightful vision, almost utopian, yet wholly unrealistic, a gentle fantasy that underscores how design shapes not just travel, but the very experience of life along the path. As the sun rises higher, light spreads evenly across the stones, revealing careful craftsmanship. Aratus moves along these same paths, his request for support from Philip V forming quietly in his mind. There is no dramatic procession, only steady progress, and you sense that this approach aligns perfectly with the character of the roads themselves, which reward patience over force. The journey offers moments of rest beside low walls and shaded bends, where travelers pause without feeling behind schedule. You imagine Aratus stopping in such places, listening to the wind move through grasses and considering his words carefully. The road seems to encourage thoughtful pauses, reminding you that movement and stillness often work best together, much like stretching between naps. As you continue, the landscape begins to change subtly, offering gentle hints that Macedon lies ahead without any fanfare or sudden announcement. Hills roll with a softer contour, valleys open with a quiet grace, and the roads maintain their steady consistency, guiding you forward with unspoken assurance. The slopes are mild, easing the transition from one region to the next, and you notice how comforting this gradual shift feels. There is a kind of serenity in knowing that movement does not need to be abrupt to be meaningful. The journey itself becomes a form of rest, a series of small deliberate steps that prepare both body and mind for what lies ahead. The approach to Macedon unfolds with quiet significance, marked not by spectacle, but by subtle shifts in the landscape that indicate steady progress. Hills soften, valleys open, and the gentle slopes of the roads ease the transition from one region to another, each curve and incline seemingly designed to guide travelers without urgency. Aratus's request to King Philip V rests calmly within this unassuming expanse, as if the land itself encouraged patience and careful deliberation. The roads, crafted for durability and capable of bearing heavy loads with minimal strain, reflect a deep understanding of balance and foresight. In this way, the journey mirrors the diplomacy it carries, measured, steady, and mindful of the weight each step or decision bears. The quiet endurance of the terrain feels almost symbolic, suggesting that thoughtful preparation and steady progress are more lasting than sudden gestures or rushed arrivals. Here, the environment itself participates in the unfolding of history. You begin to realize how much infrastructure can shape decisions. Smooth, patient paths encourage calm movement, and perhaps, by extension, calmer dialogue. Each stone placed with intention seems to whisper a suggestion that measured journeys foster measured choices. You wonder whether smoother roads truly lead to smoother conversations, a hypothesis both simple and profound, reflecting the subtle ways the physical world interacts with human deliberation. As evening approaches, the stones retain warmth from the sun, and the road reflects a soft glow. You slow your pace naturally, guided by the path's gentle inclines and the fading light. The journey feels complete not because of arrival, but because of the ease with which you have moved, and you sense that this calm approach sets the tone for everything that follows. You take a final step forward and pause, breathing in the quiet. The silent roads to Macedon stretch behind you, carrying the memory of thoughtful design and unhurried travel. You feel rested rather than tired, and you imagine Aratus feeling the same, grateful for a journey that asked nothing more than steady footsteps and a willingness to let the road lead the way. You stand beneath a vast, tranquil night sky, the air carrying a steady, soothing coolness, and the world around you seems to slow its breath. In this quiet expanse, the meeting between Aratus and Philip V unfolds with subtlety, far from the echoing proclamations of a grand hall. Stars stretch endlessly above, countless and patient, having witnessed agreements forged and dissolved across the centuries. Their gentle presence frames the moment, lending it a weight that feels deliberate rather than imposed. The atmosphere holds a softness, a quiet intention, as if even history itself has decided to speak in whispers tonight. Every sound, the faint rustle of leaves, the distant shift of night creatures, the measured movement of feet on stone blends seamlessly into the calm. In this space, diplomacy does not demand drama. It moves carefully, patiently shaped as much by what is unsaid as by the words themselves, and the night seems to hold the agreement in its serene embrace, allowing it to settle with quiet dignity. The ground beneath your feet retains the warmth of the day, reminding you that evening was often the preferred hour for serious conversation in the ancient world. Aratus stands with composed posture, attentive but relaxed, while Philip V listens without haste. Pauses stretch comfortably between their words, and each sentence seems to land with intention, allowing thought to settle before the next arises. Their alliance forms here, officially and carefully, shaped as much by silence as by speech. Above, stars glimmer with unusual clarity, scattered across the sky like lanterns hung by a thoughtful hand. In some nights of antiquity, observers would track time by the subtle movement of star shadows cast upon the earth, marking hours in a quiet, reflective way. You imagine someone checking these patterns, noticing the slow drift of darkness and light, much like glancing at a watch, but with the poetry of the cosmos guiding the rhythm instead of buzzing notifications. The stars feel patient, and their quiet presence mirrors the rhythm of the Pact itself. The alliance between Aratus and Philip V settles into place as naturally as the night descends. There is no drama, no raised voices, only an understanding that grows gradually, like eyes adjusting to darkness. You sense that the agreement feels inevitable in this moment, shaped by circumstance, patience, and measured intent, making the entire scene gentle rather than urgent. The night carries the faint scent of earth and distant fires, comforting in its subtlety. You imagine attendants moving quietly nearby, careful to avoid disturbing the calm. Aratus speaks with clarity and calm authority, while Philip V responds with thoughtful deliberation, each word resting before the next arrives. In these pauses, silence holds meaning. It is active, not empty, a space for reflection and alignment. You note how much different this is from modern conversations, often rushed and crowded, lacking room for thought to breathe. The stars above continue their slow, predictable drift across the sky, a quiet reminder that time moves steadily without pressure. In this celestial rhythm, you recall how ancient observers trusted the sky to guide them, whether farmers, sailors, or dreamers. There is a profound comfort in knowing that the alliance between Aratus and Philip V unfolds under the same celestial canopy, which has borne witness to countless human decisions, both monumental and subtle. As their understanding takes root, the pact is neither proclaimed with fanfare nor celebrated with ceremony. Instead, it exists as a shared intention, quietly acknowledged and mutually respected. Both men seem to understand that perfection is unnecessary. Stability, consistency, and trust are the aims. The night itself seems to accept their agreement, folding it gently into the flow of time rather than demanding it announce itself loudly. You notice the solid ground beneath your feet, dependable and reassuring. This physical steadiness mirrors the calm confidence with which the alliance is established. The decision is formed not for an audience, but for the enduring effect it will carry, quietly influencing what is to come. You reflect on how often the most important choices in life happen this way, without spectacle, without notice, yet with lasting impact. As the meeting gently concludes, the stars continue their slow, patient sweep across the night sky, casting soft, shadowed light that ancient observers might have once used to mark the passing hours. The air remains calm, carrying the quiet acceptance of the world itself. The pact between Aratus and Philip V feels secure, settled into the evening with a sense of ease rather than force, flowing naturally into the rhythm of the night. There is no abruptness, no need for grand gestures, only the steady assurance that careful intention and measured patience can coexist. In this understated moment, the agreement becomes a subtle triumph, quietly established yet enduring, held gently by the calm of the stars and the serenity of the hours, reminding you that lasting understanding often arrives softly, without demand or display. You breathe deeply, drawing in the cool air and letting it settle into your chest. The gentle pact under the stars remains with you, carried forward in quiet thought. It is a moment that does not demand attention, but gains meaning precisely because of its subtlety. In watching Aratus and Philip V reach understanding under this serene sky, you realize that some of the most enduring alliances are formed when the world is soft enough to listen, when time is generous enough to allow deliberation, and when decisions are allowed to unfold as naturally as the stars wheel overhead. Here, in this understated night, diplomacy is a quiet art, as steady and patient as the movement of the heavens. The pact is gentle, deliberate, and unhurried, and it teaches that even amidst the weight of politics and power, agreement can emerge without urgency, without spectacle, and with a surprising sense of grace. Beneath this canopy of stars, you observe the gentle authority of patience, the quiet strength found in listening, and the lasting serenity of a choice made, thoughtfully aligned seamlessly with the unhurried rhythms of the world where timing, calm, and understanding hold more weight than urgency or spectacle ever could. You move quietly through the familiar spaces of the Achaean League, where stone pathways curve gently beneath your feet and the morning air drifts without urgency. The League gathers in its accustomed rhythm, representatives taking their places with understated care, speaking in measured tones rather than ceremony. Yet beneath this familiar cadence, a subtle change has begun. Philip V's influence, once distant, now lingers more palpably, and Aratus's steady authority softens, like a shadow stretching across the floor in late afternoon light. The meeting halls themselves remain unchanged stone walls, classically spaced columns, but they feel different now. Voices rise and fall, lingering warmly, shaped by niches and hollows that carry echoes gently, smoothing discussion rather than amplifying it. These acoustics create a calm, almost musical quality, where even disagreement resonates softly, like a plucked string fading into silence. Sitting among delegates, you notice how the space guides conversation, encouraging reflection over impulsive response. Aratus remains influential, yet his presence now shares space with Macedonian authority. Philip V's impact is subtle, delivered through glances, carefully timed questions, and slight emphases. The shift is gradual, like light dimming into dusk, easy to overlook. Aratus listens more than he speaks, absorbing changes without confrontation. Power here does not vanish abruptly. It redistributes gently, like water finding new channels. The language of presence pauses, posture, weight of attention shapes the dialogue. Aratus's words retain authority, but coexist with Macedon's indirect influence. Each sentence is measured, each response deliberate. Delegates nod, consult notes, and allow silence to settle. Decisions take time, and the slowed rhythm allows reflection to flourish, preserving the calm cadence of the League even amid subtle change. The halls themselves seem complicit in this transformation. Recessed stone niches and carefully designed echoes warm the sound of voices, creating resonances that suggest lyres or soft strings, a deliberate architectural choice that turns conversation into a shared rhythm. You imagine the architects of these spaces smiling quietly at the unintended harmony, aware that calmer sound can encourage calmer minds. The effect is subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it changes how presence and authority feel within these walls. Outside the halls, daily life continues with reassuring normalcy. Merchants arrange goods in neat rows, citizens greet one another casually, and the rhythm of ordinary existence remains undisturbed. Political shifts unfold within the stone walls, largely invisible to those whose lives revolve around bread, weather, and tomorrow's work. This quiet compartmentalization strikes you as comforting. The world can adapt at its own pace, even as history is reshaped inside these chambers. Back within the meeting spaces, you notice the balance evolving subtly. Pauses lengthen, words are measured, and decisions form gradually rather than through assertion. Aratus remains influential, yet his authority now overlaps with the subtler presence of Macedon, creating shadows that interact rather than dominate. Power has not vanished. It has softened and redistributed, demanding attention through observation rather than declaration. Shadows remind you that influence is not absence, but the shifting of light. The Achaean lead continues to function, its structure intact, yet its illumination leans slightly toward Macedon. This change feels natural, an organic adaptation rather than disruption. The League evolves, accommodating new forces without haste or spectacle. As the meeting ends, voices fade, footsteps slow, and the warm echoes dissolve into silence. Stepping outside, sunlight or moonlight casts gentle shadows across courtyards and streets. The day seems unchanged, yet the quiet knowledge of shifting influence lingers. Walking through the stone corridors and shaded porticos, you notice gestures, glances, and routines adjusting subtly. Nothing feels forced. The world moves forward with quiet ease. The soft echoes of voices in niches, the careful pacing of delegates, and the nuanced shading of influence weave together into a calm tapestry of transition. There is no drama, no abrupt upheaval, only steady, thoughtful adaptation, as if the League itself has exhaled and accepted a new rhythm. Aratus moves alongside these changes, aware yet neither resisting nor overreaching. Leadership here seems less about assertion and more about observation, guidance, and patience. Influence now resides in the interplay between presence, architecture, and attentive listening, rather than in overt displays of power. Exiting the hall, you pause to watch the courtyards and streets beyond. The city continues its ordinary rhythm, undisturbed by the quiet recalibration within the League. Merchants, citizens, and travelers move with measured ease, unaware of the subtle shifts that have softened authority. The ordinary and the extraordinary coexist seamlessly, like interwoven threads in a finely crafted tapestry. Breathing deeply, you sense both continuity and change. The League functions and adapts, while Aratus navigates the softened contours of his influence. Like the gentle echo of a stringed instrument, these changes resonate subtly, leaving impressions that do not demand attention, but remain undeniably present. The slow redistribution of power is not a crisis, but a natural progression, harmonizing with people, architecture, and governance. Walking away, the quiet air fills your lungs. The soft shift of authority, the warm echoes, and the League's gentle adaptation accompany you. A reminder that meaningful change does not always roar. It can whisper, expand, and settle into the world like a stone dropped into still water. Here, within the Achaean League, you have witnessed transition performed with patience, subtlety, and quiet grace. Authority and influence ebb and flow like gentle currents, echoing softly against walls designed to carry sound without aggression. And as you step back into the open spaces, you carry with you the memory of a League that adapts thoughtfully, of Aratus navigating change with composed awareness, and of a world in which even the redistribution of power can move as softly as a sigh. The echoes linger, the walls retain warmth, and the streets outside continue in unhurried motion. You leave with the sense that transformation has occurred, not in spectacle, but in resonance. Not with alarm, but in harmony. Here, in these chambers and corridors, the Achaean League shifts subtly, its people and their routines absorbing new influence like a carefully tuned instrument, leaving behind a melody that is quiet, deliberate, and enduring. This is the calm of change, the soft unfolding of authority, and the enduring rhythm of a League that continues to function, adapt, and persist without disturbance, guided by patience, architecture, and the gentle flow of attentive presence. You begin to notice that trust, much like fine clay, can develop subtle fissures long before it ever breaks. Within the Achaean League, dissatisfaction rarely arrives with noise or blunt gestures. Instead, it seeps quietly among the members, settling into pauses, glances, and thoughts left unspoken as meetings extend gently into the afternoon. It is a presence felt rather than declared, like a slight tremor underfoot that hints at change without demanding attention. As you sit among representatives from various city-states, the once solid sense of shared purpose feels slightly thinner. Some view Macedonian influence as an unwelcome intrusion, while others accept it as a practical necessity for survival. Open conflict does not arise, yet a quiet tension drifts through the corridors like an unpredictable breeze. Historical accounts show that dissatisfaction grew gradually, with city-states increasingly questioning decisions made under Aratus, especially as Philip V's presence shaped outcomes more clearly. Walking slowly through stone corridors after assemblies, you notice murmured conversations hinting at private concern. Trust becomes selective and measured, each city weighing its interests carefully. The constant vigilance required is mentally taxing, like monitoring calm skies for subtle shifts. In quiet corners, you notice pottery resting on shelves carved into stone walls. These everyday objects hold more than utility. They carry subtle stories. Archaeologists would later uncover ceramic vessels from this era, etched with verses that read like poetry, yet softly critique political life. Complaints about leadership, alliances, and uncertainty were embedded in rhythm and metaphor, proving that even frustration preferred gentleness and form. You imagine a potter, hands steady, expression composed, carving these lines with intent. Transforming grievances into poetic form feels almost therapeutic, like journaling after a long day. The act suggests that dissatisfaction existed, yet individuals still sought beauty and balance within it, a reassuringly human gesture that bridges past and present. There is a faintly modern resonance here, a sense that even in tense circumstances, people sought to express concern gracefully, finding subtle ways to preserve dignity while voicing unease. Back within the council spaces, the quiet discontent manifests in repetition. Topics once considered resolved resurface, discussions take longer, and decisions require more deliberation than in earlier times. Aratus listens attentively, his demeanor unchanged, but you sense the subtle shift in weight on his shoulders. Authority remains, yet it now operates in a more distributed form, shared across the nuanced influence of Macedon and the watchful eyes of the delegates. Trust erodes not through single dramatic moments, but through accumulation small concerns, layering upon one another like dust settling on the corner of a shelf. Each layer softens clarity, diffusing the firm certainty that once guided the League, yet leaving the structure itself intact. As you move through the city beyond the halls, the contrast between political tension and ordinary life becomes evident. Merchants arrange goods in quiet squares, citizens exchange greetings, and children play along sunlit streets. Meals are shared, and soft laughter punctuates the air. The daily rhythms continue undisturbed, as if politics and life follow parallel tracks, sometimes intersecting, but often maintaining separate cadences. You reflect that most historical fractures occur, while ordinary moments persist, a reminder that the personal and communal often outlast public discord. There is something quietly comforting in this continuity, a sense that life endures even as governance adjusts and trust reshapes itself. Through these observations, you realize that trust, like clay, does not disappear instantaneously. It stretches, thins, and reforms gradually. The Achaean League continues to function, still connected in purpose, though its bonds feel more flexible, less rigid than before. This realization brings a calm perspective. Change is not always catastrophic. It can be incremental, subtle, and harmonious with ongoing life. Dissatisfaction does not always demand resolution in dramatic acts. It often coexists with routine, learning, and adaptation. As evening falls, you walk slowly through quietened courtyards, the fading light casting gentle shadows across stone pathways. Conversations taper into soft murmurs, and the echo of voices lingers warmly against walls. In these muted spaces, the slow recalibration of influence becomes almost tangible. Aratus's presence, once the defining force, now moves in dialogue with Macedon's quiet reach. The interplay of attention, observation, and subtle negotiation forms a delicate balance that does not announce itself, but manifests in posture, pause, and shared silence. You sense how leadership in such a space is less about assertion and more about guidance awareness, tempered by patience and an openness to the evolving contours of authority. The pottery you glimpsed earlier returns to your thoughts. Like the verses etched into clay, these small, deliberate acts of creation reflect humanity's persistent effort to preserve expression amid constraint. Even as trust bends and fractures, there is room for grace, beauty, and reflection. Complaints exist, but they are tempered, framed within forms that encourage consideration rather than confrontation. In these quiet gestures, the League preserves cohesion, even as bonds stretch, demonstrating a nuanced understanding of human nature and social continuity. The redistribution of influence unfolds gradually. Shadows of authority shift, power flows subtly, and the League accommodates without disruption. Decisions are made, discussions continue, and the daily life of citizens proceeds alongside the unspoken adjustments in governance. Change here is not abrupt. It is embedded in observation, presence, and careful adaptation. It harmonizes with architecture, ritual, and the ordinary cadence of life, creating a rhythm that feels natural, steady, and enduring. You pause once more, taking in the scene, the quiet halls, the attentive delegates, the soft echo of voices, and the ordinary activities beyond the council. Dissatisfaction persists, yet it is tempered, poetic, and patient. Like cracks in pottery that do not compromise its function, the fractures in trust remain subtle, carrying history's lessons with grace. You feel the weight of both continuity and adjustment, realizing that true resilience emerges not through sudden acts of assertion, but through quiet, thoughtful evolution. Walking away, you carry this image with you, the gentle layering of influence, the soft persistence of human expression, and the calm unfolding of authority. Trust may have its fissures, yet the Achaean League endures. Dissatisfaction finds voice in poetry, in silence, in careful reflection, showing that even amid uncertainty, systems and people can adapt with patience, creativity, and dignity. You arrive in Aegium as the light softens, the town poised between the fading brightness of day and the gentle onset of evening. The coastal settlement carries a serene rhythm, accustomed to measured footsteps and quiet contemplation from generations who have walked its streets. The faint saltiness of the nearby sea drifts through the air, subtle and refreshing, mingling with the warmth of sunlit stone and the distant sound of gentle waves. The town feels designed to welcome reflection as naturally as it does everyday life. Walking toward the council area, you notice how the layout encourages unhurried movement. Narrow paths wind between stone buildings that catch the fading light, reflecting it softly and guiding steps without urgency. Each structure seems intentional, as if the architects understood that balance and proportion could shape both space and the pace of thought. Historically, Aegium served as a central meeting place for the Achaean League, hosting assemblies where representatives deliberated decisions during times of political uncertainty, when patience mattered as much as planning. You take a seat on one of the stone benches arranged for these meetings, positioned so that sea breezes drift through the space. The cooling wind touches those seated, creating comfort that encourages reflection. The benches, worn smooth by decades of use, carry the memory of countless deliberations, testifying to the continuity of civic practice. As the meeting begins, conversation unfolds slowly. Long pauses follow each statement, allowing words to settle and the weight of proposals to be absorbed. Discussion is deliberate. Nothing is rushed. In these pauses, more is communicated than in spoken words. The calm atmosphere, shaped by gentle wind, open air, and thoughtful design, ensures serious matters are approached with composure. Voices carry softly, softened further by walls and stone surfaces that moderate sound, creating a space where reflection prevails over haste. The evening breeze drifts through the council space, altering the sound of voices and softening their sharp edges before they reach your ears. Even contentious discussions carry a cooperative quality, filtered through this natural modulation that makes disagreement feel measured and manageable. The stone seats beneath you remain cool, grounding and steady, a reminder that countless others have occupied this space before, pondering decisions under the same sky and attended by the same gentle wind. Aegium itself seems an active participant in the assembly, offering shade, air, and firm ground. It asks nothing in return. It shapes the experience, allowing human deliberation to unfold with rhythm and dignity. Outside, the town continues in quiet resilience. Merchants close their stalls, citizens exchange greetings, and daily life proceeds unaffected by the political work nearby. There is a seamless coexistence between civic duty and ordinary routines, a harmony that feels both natural and sustaining. As twilight deepens, oil lamps are lit one by one, casting a steady, warm glow across the council area. The mingling of soft light and cooling evening air creates a setting conducive to thoughtfulness. Discussions extend well into the evening, guided not by urgency, but by a shared understanding that deliberation benefits from patience, reflection, and attention. Each proposal is considered slowly, its merit weighed as much in silence as in speech. Decisions seem inseparable from the environment, influenced subtly by light, air, and the rhythm of conversation. The deliberate design of the space becomes evident. Benches are angled for comfort without indulgence. Pathways and open layouts allow breezes to flow freely, and walls shape sound to guide tone and temper. Even gestures, the shift of a chair, a glance toward a colleague, the measured motion of hands, carry meaning beyond words. In Aegium, stone, wind, and light participate in deliberation, creating a natural patience that allows calm reasoning to flourish. Here, the environment supports reflection, tempers tension, and encourages thoughtful collaboration, demonstrating that surroundings can profoundly influence both the mind and the course of decisions. You notice how the meeting spaces, simple yet thoughtfully constructed, seem to absorb the intensity of debate and diffuse it. The result is a deliberative atmosphere where disagreement is less threatening and consensus can emerge gently rather than by force. Delegates respond to one another with measured care, listening as much as speaking, aware of both words and the spaces in which they occur. Even difficult decisions feel less burdensome in this setting, shaped as they are by the environment's influence. Outside, the light continues to fade. The sea's surface shimmers in the dimming glow, reflecting the gradual shift from day to night. The townspeople's routines continue undisturbed, reinforcing the impression that life and politics coexist naturally here. Even as oil lamps cast long shadows in the council courtyard, the wind carries a sense of continuity and steadiness, a quiet assurance that discussion and reflection are ongoing, grounded in a space built for endurance and thoughtfulness. When the council finally disperses, you remain seated for a moment longer, taking in the balance of the town, the cool air, and the gentle sound of the sea. The sky deepens into night, and the oil lamps flicker steadily, creating a calm, contemplative glow. You breathe deeply, sensing the care embedded in every stone and pathway, appreciating the way Aegium supports deliberation without intrusion. Rising to leave, you carry the sense of this town with you. Its calm, intentional presence lingers like a quiet companion. Walking through its streets toward the outer gates, you notice how the balance of light and shadow, air and stone, human action and natural rhythm, shapes thought as much as discussion. The evening settles gently around you, and the memory of twilight in Aegium stays, a reminder that serious moments can unfold in spaces designed for patience, comfort, and reflection. With each step away, the town recedes, but its influence endures, lingering like a steady, reassuring breath. Aegium has provided not only a place to meet, but a mood, a rhythm, a gentle template for thoughtful action. You feel prepared to continue onward, carrying with you the lesson that balance, intentionality, and calm presence can guide both conversation and decision. Even as the streets fade behind you, their echo of patience and care remains, a quiet gift that accompanies your journey forward, ensuring that reflection, deliberation, and serenity are never far from mind. You enter a quiet library where the air carries a gentle coolness and time seems to slow, as if the space itself encourages reflection. Shelves of scrolls line the walls, their surfaces softened by age and careful handling. Each hums with history, waiting for a reader or writer to awaken the knowledge within. Here, Aratus spends long, deliberate hours recording his thoughts, shaping concern into words that emerge almost as whispers from the page. The library demands neither haste nor attention. It nurtures contemplation and deliberate action. Historically, Aratus wrote memoirs and reflections, documenting his political life with care and precision. You imagine him seated at a low wooden table, posture relaxed yet attentive, stylus in hand. His writing is unhurried, a conversation with himself, rather than a performance for others. Each stroke is intentional, a small act of order amid a complex and unpredictable political landscape. In this calm environment, writing becomes a form of breathing, a method of translating the weight of responsibility into measured, comprehensible lines. The room carries faint scents of papyrus and oil lamps, mingled with the subtle musk of aged wood. The only sounds are delicate, the rustle of parchment, the occasional sigh of wind against a window, and the soft scratch of stylus on scroll. These noises, amplified in the stillness, create a rhythmical, comforting pulse, a backdrop that encourages focus and reflection. You notice the ink's subtle variations, darker in cooler air, lighter under lamplight, creating a natural rhythm across the page that mirrors thought in motion, as if the ink itself responds to its surroundings. This changing ink reflects Aratus's own mental processes. Cold clarity brings darker, sharper lines of concern. Warmer light softens strokes, hinting at contemplation, compromise, or patience. Writing mediates between intellect and emotion, allowing him to process the complexities of leadership without losing balance. Each note charts subtle shifts in authority, influence, and trust within the Achaean League. Aratus pauses occasionally, listening to the faint crackle of the lamp or letting his mind drift before returning to the scroll. Writing does not erase his concerns, but holds them gently, preventing them from accumulating into unmanageable weight, creating a careful, deliberate map of thought and observation. The library's atmosphere shapes every aspect of reflection. Distant sounds from the town, the occasional footstep, a murmur of conversation, or the faint crash of waves arrive softened, creating awareness of the wider world without intruding. The space offers separation without isolation, allowing focus to settle fully on thought and record. Shelves filled with scrolls of law, poetry, and philosophy stand as silent witnesses to countless voices over time, a collective memory of debates, arguments, and insights. The coexistence of ideas without hierarchy or competition reassures, suggesting that knowledge itself respects patience and quiet deliberation. You move slowly among the scrolls, tracing faded labels and delicate bindings, imagining the hands that created each one. The arrangement has order, yet it encourages exploration rather than enforcing efficiency, reflecting the library's approach to thought, measured, intentional, and accommodating of pauses. You picture Aratus walking these aisles, absorbing the rhythm and presence of the space, learning how structure, timing, and environment support careful decision-making. His stylus moves deliberately across parchment, forming ideas fully before committing them to words. Aratus records the subtle shifts of influence within the League, measured responses of citizens and delegates, quiet compromises, and minor agreements. His notes read like a dialogue with time, balancing the weight of responsibility with the patience required to manage it. Even his small gestures, stretching fingers, pausing to rest the stylus, glancing at the slowly shifting light, reinforce a rhythm that blends physical ease with mental clarity. The room itself participates. The glow of oil lamps, temperature shifts, and scent of aging scrolls all interact with the mind. The environment becomes a partner in reflection, supporting Aratus as he transforms uncertainty into measured understanding, turning observation into careful, deliberate insight. Time in the library moves slowly, unhurried, allowing each moment to stretch and insight to deepen. You imagine Aratus occasionally lifting his gaze to the shelves or the window, taking in the world around him while carefully recording his impressions. This is not a hurried documentation of events, but a measured preservation of thought, a patient layering of reflection onto reality. Writing in this deliberate cadence shapes both the writer and the record he leaves behind. As you prepare to leave, the image of ink subtly shifting with light and temperature lingers, a reminder that even ideas respond to their surroundings. You feel the weight of calm reflection, the value of patience, and the quiet power of careful observation. Stepping back into the wider world, the air feels lighter, noise less pressing, and thinking becomes intentional rather than rushed. In this space, you have seen how Aratus transforms concern into record, thought into text, and uncertainty into steady attention, leaving behind manuscripts that carry a legacy of mindful care. Even as you depart, the library remains with you, the low hum of silence, the gentle modulation of voices and ink, the steady presence of scrolls, and the patient act of writing. Reflection here is both practice and refuge, showing that even weighty concerns can be held gently, observed thoughtfully, and recorded with deliberate care. You step back into the wider world, carrying the calm, deliberate rhythm of the library with you. Thoughts, like ink darkened by cool air or warmed by lamplight, respond to their surroundings. The space has imparted lessons of patience, attention, and quiet reflection, showing that even concern can be managed with grace and care. The library, with its soft air, ancient scrolls, and carefully tempered light, demonstrates how thought, environment, and method intertwine. Aratus writing, ink shifting with temperature, remains in your mind a reminder that insight grows slowly. That reflection requires space, and that even complex responsibilities can be approached with patience and clarity. Here, history is neither loud nor urgent. It is quiet, deliberate, and attentive, teaching that the mind, like ink, flourishes when given room to breathe. You carry these lessons forward into every measured step, thoughtful decision, and considered word. You walk alongside Aratus, sensing time's subtle passage, not marked by dates or proclamations, but by atmosphere, rhythm, and quiet changes in behavior. Days stretch with deliberate slowness, the world easing into observation. Aratus follows familiar routines, attending assemblies, walking shaded paths, and engaging with allies in measured conversation. Over months and years, however, you notice a gradual transformation. His influence within the Achaean League diminishes as Philip V's authority steadily grows. The change is so gentle that it initially goes unnoticed, less a loss than a natural rebalancing of power, subtle as twilight blending into night or a river slowly reshaping its banks. Historically, Aratus's standing declines as Macedonian involvement deepens in Greek affairs. You imagine him attending fewer assemblies, speaking less frequently, and listening with heightened attentiveness. He remains respected, yet no longer decisive, akin to a trusted elder whose counsel matters even when others act independently. Influence, you realize, does not disappear, it transforms, softening from command to quiet guidance, expressed through observation, subtle advice, and measured timing rather than overt assertion. Walking with him along shaded paths, leaves stirring gently in the breeze, sunlight filtering in scattered patterns, each step feels contemplative. Aratus pauses often, attuned to things that escape ordinary notice. Historical anecdotes suggest he could gauge weather by listening to unfamiliar bird calls, a skill curious, yet plausible, for someone attuned to nuance. He treats these sounds not as omens, but as gentle indicators of change, integrating them into his understanding of the world, much like political currents. Observing him, you sense that this attentiveness is both care and skill, an extension of his patient leadership. Stopping to listen, you hear birds' calls rising and falling unpredictably, blending with wind and rustling leaves. Perhaps the pitch shifts with atmospheric pressure, or perceptive minds simply notice more. Either way, Aratus interprets these signals as part of a larger landscape, treating them as guidance rather than instruction. Similarly, political shifts around him unfold subtly through gestures, glances, and quietly rearranged alliances, never announced with fanfare, but felt in every careful observation. His days feel slower now, paced by observation and reflection rather than action. You imagine him sitting in a quiet courtyard, watching clouds drift lazily across the sky, the movement of wind through grass, or the light shifting across stone. In these moments, influence appears transient, like weather present, impactful, yet independent of personal control. The recognition that one cannot dictate every circumstance brings with it a sense of calm. Aratus does not resist. He accepts. The idea is liberating. Leadership is not solely about exerting power, but about understanding the rhythm of forces larger than oneself and moving in harmony with them. Philip V's authority grows steadily, reshaping alliances, forging new connections, and steering the League's course. Aratus watches these changes quietly, aware that his role has evolved. He no longer dictates agendas with the certainty of earlier years, yet his presence remains meaningful, expressed through measured counsel, careful observation, and a nuanced understanding of relationships. His authority is no longer enforced through overt action, but felt through perception, experience, and insight into connections others might overlook. Those around him respond with subtle respect. Conversations soften in his presence. Gestures and tones shift to acknowledge his experience. And while individuals act independently, they still listen attentively. This respect is personal rather than institutional, an acknowledgement of wisdom rather than formal command. Influence, you realize, does not need to be loud to be potent. It can endure quietly, carried in presence and attentiveness. As the seasons pass, Aratus turns more frequently to nature. Birds, rustling leaves, and shifting sunlight become companions in reflection. He observes small variations in light and temperature, tracing rhythms of the natural world with the same patience once devoted to politics. These attentions ground him, offering continuity and calm. They allow influence to persist subtly, demonstrating that authority can endure in quiet, patient, and deeply considered forms. The decline of Aratus's formal authority unfolds with remarkable subtlety. Power does not vanish abruptly. It reshapes and redistributes, shifting from the commanding direction of assemblies to a quieter, more resonant form rooted in experience, counsel, and attentive observation. Influence need not disappear to diminish in effect. It can assume a different character, moving from overt command to presence, from pronouncement to careful watchfulness. Aratus embodies this principle, guiding through patience, awareness, and gentle intervention rather than assertion. This quiet recalibration reminds you that value does not depend solely on rank or control. It can persist in subtler, enduring ways. Walking alongside him, you notice how the soft decline of influence mirrors the streets, shaded paths, and silent courtyards. Change is gradual, perceptible only to those paying attention, yet its impact is profound. Ordinary rhythms of daily life continue uninterrupted, while subtle shifts in authority ripple through civic structures and routines. Aratus's days, filled with reflection, observation, and deliberate engagement, show that leadership can adapt gracefully to changing circumstances. Influence, like light filtering through leaves or wind gliding over grass, moves naturally. It endures not through force, but through steady presence, careful attention, and adaptability. Endings of authority, power, or responsibility need not be dramatic. They can arrive quietly, preserving continuity and shaping a gentler, more reflective world. The path ahead remains clear and calm. You sense that Aratus's authority, while diminished in formal weight, continues to inform the League and those around him in ways that cannot be measured by immediate effect alone. Wisdom persists in presence, patience, and subtle intervention. You carry this understanding with you. That power, influence, and relevance can transform into forms that are enduring and meaningful, even without visible assertion. Endings can unfold without rupture, and the quiet persistence of experience, attentiveness, and care ensures that the world continues with grace. Walking with Aratus, you sense that fading authority does not vanish, but transforms. Nature's rhythms, birds, wind, shifting light remind you that influence persists through wisdom, presence, and patient observation. Power softens, yet continuity, grace, and attentiveness sustain both leadership and life itself. You walk slowly through streets paved with worn stone, each step echoing softly, as if the ground itself remembers generations of feet that have passed this way. The Achaean League persists, but you notice subtle signs of quiet divergence. Some regions begin to act more independently, making administrative decisions without the fanfare of upheaval. The process is gentle, almost imperceptible, like neighbors, quietly adjusting their schedules, or families choosing different meal times. Nothing shouts. Everything unfolds with a human, almost polite rhythm. It is history whispering, not declaring itself. The streets curve and wind with a natural, unhurried grace. You observe how towns maintain their own rhythms, their customs slightly more autonomous than before. Small differences emerge, some practical, others traditional, but all hint at a gradual drift. Historically, this period marks early signs of regional separation within the League, a decentralization that occurs not through rebellion, but through quiet accommodation. Houses line the streets with narrow windows that admit just enough light to illuminate interiors. Candlelight flickers within, casting gentle shadows across walls. These openings suggest a life lived inwardly, focused on family and daily routines rather than distant politics. The effect is cozy, almost protective, like architectural introversion, and you think these homes would fail modern real estate standards, yet succeed at providing calm evenings. The residents' lives continue undisturbed, illustrating how even when governance shifts, small routines persist with reassuring continuity. As you walk, your footsteps fall in time with the streets themselves. Each echo is measured, reminding you that fractures in unity rarely announce themselves. Cities make decisions suited to local needs, quietly adjusting priorities without confrontation. You notice the stones of doorways and walls, smoothed by countless hands, enduring witnesses to alliances forming and loosening. They seem unconcerned with politics, which is oddly comforting proof that life continues despite abstract shifts in power. The air is still and forgiving. Streets connect without demanding direction, permitting wandering without pressure. The League's cohesion weakens, yet daily life, bread baking, conversations flowing, evenings arriving, remains steady. Residents adapt gradually, local councils meet separately, small decisions replace shared ones, and no one raises a voice. Change here feels like adjusting a playlist rather than ending a concert, a quiet, stress-free progression of events. As dusk deepens, candlelight spills from tiny windows, offering gentle illumination to the streets. The design of these homes seems almost intentional in its effect, protecting interiors from noise and distraction, encouraging calm reflection, and promoting evening rest. You slow your pace, breathing in rhythm with the quiet world around you. The fractures within the League are abstract, distant, and largely irrelevant to the immediate comfort of the streets. Meetings happen less frequently, agreements grow looser, and independence expands subtly, like plants bending towards sunlight on their own terms. Passing beneath an archway, your footsteps sound deeper, resonant. You imagine countless others moving along the same path centuries before, unaware of the structural shifts happening around them. The thought is reassuring. History unfolds quietly, often without the notice of those living within it. Night falls fully, cooling the air and softening the edges of the streets. Candlelight reflects gently on stone surfaces, and a calm settles over the town. The abstract fractures of the League remain distant, overshadowed by the tangible, comforting constancy of home, path, and hearth. You continue walking without destination or urgency, content in the subtle rhythm of a world that moves forward gently. The old streets cradle you, offering continuity amid change, teaching that even when institutions drift, life's daily routines maintain their steady cadence. You feel grounded, unhurried, and peaceful, as though history itself has chosen to stroll beside you on this quiet evening, leaving lessons of patience, adaptation, and calm firmly imprinted on your mind. The movement through stone corridors, shaded pathways, and softly glowing doorways becomes a meditation on continuity. You notice how independence grows quietly in the League, yet the human experience remains cohesive. Families dine, merchants close their shops, conversations continue, all small acts that carry forward life unbothered by the slow political drift. The streets themselves encourage reflection, patience, and attentiveness. Every step, Every shadow, every flicker of candlelight feels like a gentle punctuation in the ongoing story of the League. By the time you finally pause, the night has fully enveloped the town. Candlelit windows mark quiet interiors. The air carries a gentle chill, and the streets remain soft underfoot. The slow, polite separation within the League is imperceptible here, absorbed into daily life like a quiet undertone in a familiar melody. You feel a profound sense of continuity, comforted by the knowledge that while alliances and authorities may shift, life continues with steady grace. The streets, the stone, the flickering light, and the gentle rhythms of human activity intertwine, forming a living environment that mediates history itself. You walk onward, unhurried, carrying with you the lesson that change can arrive softly, unannounced, and still profoundly shape the world, while leaving the ordinary cadence of life intact. The Achaean League may drift, but the streets endure, and in that enduring calm, you find reassurance, stability, and the quiet beauty of measured history. Even as you move beyond the town, the sense of calm lingers. The streets, stone walls, and candlelight remain in memory as markers of continuity, a reminder that transitions, whether political, social, or personal, can occur gracefully without rupture. The evening stroll teaches that while structures shift and alliances realign, life's essential rhythms work, rest, and presence persist, offering a steady anchor amid quiet upheaval. Walking beneath the stars, you sense the League's gentle drift reflected in the town's quiet rhythms. Candlelight flickers, shadows stretch, and history reveals itself not in proclamations, but in subtle, patient motions. Streets cradle both change and constancy, showing that influence can ebb without destruction. Daily life hones, paths, and routines persists, providing a gentle framework for adaptation. The calm glow of evening teaches that resilience, patience, and continuity endure, guiding you through a world where authority softens, yet life flows steadily, gracefully, and thoughtfully. You begin to perceive the change, not as a sudden fracture, but as a broad, quiet thinning. Greek unity no longer moves like a single, shared breath, but resembles many individual breaths taken in similar rooms, familiar yet separate. Alliances that once aligned city-states now loosen subtly, and the Achaean League shifts into gentler, more dispersed forms. From a distance, the whole appears intact, yet up close, the soft divisions become apparent. The cohesion of the past gives way to a slower, quieter realignment, where cities continue to act together only when convenience or circumstance dictates, rather than from a shared urgency. Historically, this is the era when Greek unity grows less coherent. City-states continue governing themselves according to long-established customs, yet coordination wanes. Messages travel more slowly, decisions reflect local priorities first, and overarching agreements soften into suggestions rather than imperatives. It feels less like a formal split and more like people rearranging furniture to suit changing light, gradual, practical, and entirely human. You walk along paths connecting sanctuaries, assembly grounds, and marketplaces, sensing a shared weariness with the exertion of constant alignment. Unity is still valued, but it no longer shapes daily life with the same immediacy. It becomes a background rhythm, faint yet persistent, like a calendar that everyone owns but consults less often. At Delphi, the air carries its own subtle authority. Ancient inscriptions speak of the wind passing through temple columns, producing a sound reminiscent of distant human sighs. Some believe the stone shaped the air into mournful tones, while others simply appreciated the acoustics. The effect is quiet and soft, never sharp or commanding. You pause to listen as the breeze moves through the temple, each gust resembling a long, measured exhale. The sound feels entirely natural, like weather performing its usual work. The temple itself remains steady, offering shade, echo, and presence without commentary. You find reassurance in its indifference, a reminder that some forces like the wind or the stone persist without asking for acknowledgement or compliance. Historians debate whether such omens influenced political moods, but you consider the question gently. Even if observers noticed the sighing air, it likely merged with the background of thought rather than dictating action. Humans are inclined to seek meaning in patterns, even when patterns exist independently of intent. In this quiet, unforced setting, the fading cohesion of the League feels less alarming and more natural. Everyday life continues with its habitual rhythm. Markets open and close, lessons are taught, meals are shared, and neighbors converse. Large political abstractions recede without disturbing the daily order, offering a grounding sense of continuity. You realize that while unity may soften, ordinary routines remain resilient, a comforting contrast to the impermanence of broader structures. As you continue walking through streets and courtyards, once dedicated to shared civic identity, the focus of conversation shifts. Travelers and locals alike now discuss local harvests, family matters, and weather rather than collective ambition. The shift is organic, gradual, and unannounced, like language evolving imperceptibly over time. There is no dramatic break, no outcry, only a natural redistribution of attention and energy. The League's formal structures persist, yet they feel lighter, less binding. Cooperation occurs by choice rather than obligation. This freedom carries both calm and uncertainty, but it asks nothing urgent of you. It simply exists, like a quiet afternoon unburdened by pressing duties. As evening falls, the wind at Delphi softens, carrying warmth from the lingering sun. Shadows stretch slowly across the temple floor, and you sit for a moment, absorbing the stillness. The fading unity of the League does not feel like loss, but transformation. Authority and influence shift from explicit decree to subtler forms, memory, precedent, and shared history. The organization moves from structure to reflection, from immediacy to recollection. In this process, connection persists even as formal coordination weakens, and there is a peculiar comfort in that continuity. You rise and resume your walk, untroubled by the slow fade you have witnessed. The streets remain solid beneath your feet, the air kind and forgiving, and the pace of life unhurried. You carry the thought that even as unity softens, connection endures in quieter, subtler forms. Alliances and influence are no longer enforced through obligation, yet they persist in gestures, customs, and the patient rhythms of daily life. History, you realize, is not always loud or urgent. It can drift slowly, subtly reshaping patterns without demanding notice, like the shifting of wind through columns or the elongation of shadows at twilight. Passing through the open spaces once resonant with collective purpose, you see the traces of the past lingering without demanding authority. City-states attend to local needs, councils meet in smaller groups, and agreements are reached more informally. This measured independence is not defiance, but a quiet recalibration, an adaptation that allows communities to continue functioning while broader coherence softens. The faint echoes of previous assemblies seem to linger in courtyards and temples, reminding you that history maintains continuity even as its expression changes. Unity has not vanished. It has merely moved into forms that require closer attention to perceive. Walking further, the streets guide you without force. Stone paths, narrow alleys, and quiet courtyards all encourage reflection. Each step feels considered, in rhythm with the gentle reorganization of civic life. You notice candlelight beginning to glow from small windows, soft and inviting. Homes seem inward-facing, protective of their inhabitants and daily routines, yet welcoming in their calm. The light does not demand attention, but it affirms continuity. Daily practices baking bread, sharing meals, exchanging greetings persist undisturbed, offering reassurance that life moves forward even as political cohesion fades. As night deepens, shadows stretch and the breeze cools. The League's fractures remain subtle, yet the streets provide steadiness. You wander through a world where change arrives quietly, guided by old paths that balance continuity and adaptation. Authority drifts softly, life endures gracefully, and the League's slow transformation teaches patience, resilience, and the enduring value of subtle, persistent connections. You move through the later days with a sense of quiet completion, as if the long road of life is gently leveled after a slow descent. Aratus now inhabits time differently, no longer driven by councils, debates, or the pressing demands of political strategy. He follows a rhythm set by light, wind, and the steady cadences of everyday life. Each moment unfolds deliberately, allowing observation, reflection, and measured action to guide him. Walking beside him, you notice how his presence has softened. Movements are unhurried, each step conscious yet effortless, attuned to the subtle patterns of the world shadows shifting with the sun, leaves stirring in the breeze, the distant murmur of daily routines. The urgency that once defined his days has eased, replaced by a patient attentiveness to the ordinary and extraordinary alike. This inward focus brings a sense of equilibrium. Aratus listens more than he speaks, observes more than he commands, and allows life to unfold around him without interference. Even in stepping back from formal authority, he exudes influence calm, steady, and quietly profound. In these later days, leadership becomes less about direction and more about presence, patience, and harmony with the world's natural flow. Historically, this period marks the end of Aratus' life after decades of guiding the Achaean League and observing Greek affairs with careful attention. His death does not arrive in sudden upheaval or dramatic circumstance. It settles quietly into the day like dusk, steady and expected. You sense no alarm or disruption, only the gentle acknowledgement that a long, purposeful journey has reached its resting place. There is a remarkable simplicity in the passing, as though life itself provides space for endings to occur without ceremony or exaggeration. You imagine him in a small, airy room, curtains lifting gently with a passing breeze. He rests comfortably, breathing slowly, attuned to the ambient sounds that have accompanied his life. Distant bird song, leaves shifting in the wind, and the subtle movements of those nearby. The world continues outside, uninterrupted, and that continuity seems essential, a reminder that endings do not demand upheaval, and that life itself carries forward steadily, even as individuals depart. Some accounts suggest that shortly before his passing, Aratus noticed a delicate scent, like fresh pine resin or sap. The detail is intimate rather than dramatic, a quiet marker of presence rather than a portent. You pause to consider the resonance of smell, how pine evokes shade, mountains, and cool air, grounding the mind with familiarity. If this fragrance lingered in his final moments, it could have provided a natural anchor, a subtle signal from the world at the threshold of rest. Time seems to stretch in the room, carrying neither urgency nor spectacle. Aratus breathes evenly, his thoughts oriented not toward regret, achievement, or ambition, but toward acceptance. It is a calm resolution, a restful engagement with the inevitable, and in that repose there is something profound. The people around him respond with quiet attentiveness. Voices are soft, movements gentle, and silence is allowed to settle without tension. There is no need to frame the moment with ceremony. Life concludes here with humility, with the kind of completion that does not demand acknowledgement to exist. Outside, the day continues its rhythm. Birds flit among branches, light shifts across stone walls, and the ordinary sounds of life carry on undisturbed. History often records death as a line of text or a date in a chronicle, but the lived experience of passing is rarely so abrupt. Instead, it unfolds slowly, subtly, and with the natural cadence of the surrounding world. There is a quiet reassurance in recognizing that existence does not require dramatization to remain meaningful or balanced. As Aratus's life nears its end, the space remains serene, free from turmoil or dramatic display. A profound stillness settles, calm and dignified, like a lake resting after a gentle breeze. His presence lingers subtly, woven into memory, civic routines, and the enduring practices of the League's governance. Decisions, assemblies, and daily administration continue, shaped quietly by the precedents he established. Though he is no longer active, the influence he cultivated persists, carried in the habits, awareness, and shared knowledge of those who follow. Authority, once exercised openly, now lives in the structures and customs he helped solidify, sustaining order without requiring direct oversight. In this way, Aratus's legacy endures, not as a force exerted in the moment, but as a quiet, steady imprint embedded in the functioning of the League and the rhythm of its cities, demonstrating that guidance can survive even as the guide departs. You reflect on how journeys do not always end with sudden closure or clear demarcation. Some simply ease into stillness, leaving traces rather than sharp boundaries. Aratus's life, defined by patient leadership, careful observation, and thoughtful engagement with both people and place, concludes in a manner consistent with the way he lived, gentle, considered, and unhurried. The legacy is quiet, embedded in memory, practice, and the rhythm of civic life. You step away slowly, carrying the memory of pine-scented air and Aratus's calm, measured breathing. The moment remains with you, not as grief, but as a quiet testament to a life concluding naturally. It settles gently in your mind, like a page turned with care, allowing reflection to unfold without hurry or disruption. The stillness lingers, a subtle reminder that endings need not be abrupt or loud. They can arrive softly, leaving space for thought, continuity, and the serene acknowledgement that even the longest journeys may conclude with quiet grace and gentle acceptance. As evening approaches, your own pace slows. The story of Aratus does not push you forward. It rests beside you. You breathe evenly, aware that this long journey has reached a natural pause. In that pause, you find reassurance. Long lives, like extended walks through shaded streets or quiet rooms, are allowed to end softly, without noise, without haste, and with the dignity that accompanies understanding, acceptance, and patient observation. You move gently across the Peloponnese, feeling a quietude that is neither empty nor stagnant. After Aratus's passing, life in the region continues with its familiar rhythms, yet there is a subtle shift in authority. Philip V's influence settles firmly, but unobtrusively, like a soft light that changes the color of the landscape without drawing attention to itself. The transition is gentle, perceived not in sudden proclamations or upheavals, but in the small, steady cadences of daily life. Roads remain traveled, markets remain open, and workshops hum with routine. Authority manifests as a framework rather than a force, guiding without insisting, present yet unobtrusive. Its quiet consistency reassuring to those who inhabit the land. Historically, this is the period in which Philip V consolidates control over much of Greek affairs. You sense this not in dramatic gestures, but in the orderly rhythm of administration. Messengers arrive on time, agreements carry predictability, and expectations are clarified. The result is subtle but profound, a landscape of governance shaped by regularity rather than spectacle. The effect is soothing, almost meditative, like labeling boxes in a long disorganized storeroom, a quiet act of order that brings ease to those within its influence. Consolidation becomes a kind of background presence, unobtrusive but unmistakable in its impact, like the gentle hum of a fan on a warm night. As you move through the towns, the behavior of the residents strikes you with its calmness. There is no visible tension, no overt demonstrations of authority, no proclamations demanding attention. Life continues at its own measured pace. Markets open punctually. Shopkeepers and artisans follow their familiar routines, and citizens navigate daily obligations without disruption. The streets hum with ordinary activity, and the sense of continuity is striking. It feels as though the towns themselves absorb and distribute the quiet order that now governs them. Philip V's influence is present, but it is subtle, embedded in the smooth functioning of systems rather than in any public display of force. Deliveries arrive reliably, assemblies convene efficiently, and agreements are implemented with minimal confusion. People notice the structure more than the ruler, sensing stability in the seamless execution of civic duties. Authority here is exercised as framework rather than spectacle, guiding life without demanding overt recognition. The understated nature of this governance enhances its durability. Its quiet, consistent presence allows individuals to live and work without anxiety, knowing the framework is steady. Control is felt rather than proclaimed. Reliability rather than fear becomes the basis of obedience. In this way, the slow, silent spread of Philip V's power secures compliance naturally, creating an environment where order exists as a background condition rather than a daily imposition. Walking past older fortifications, you notice how sound behaves differently here. Voices echo briefly against stone before fading, and footsteps create gentle reverberations. The Peloponnese seems to absorb memory itself, allowing the past to linger softly without forcing remembrance. You imagine the walls bearing witness to countless decisions, battles, and alliances, yet holding these events with equanimity. The landscape is patient, impartial, and enduring. It teaches that history need not intrude to be present. In one ancient citadel, archaeologists later uncover a copper ingot whose origins remain unclear. It does not match local sources, and its purpose is a mystery. You picture it resting quietly for decades, unnoticed, like a forgotten bookmark in a venerable manuscript. It carries no message, demands no interpretation. It simply exists. There is comfort in this, an acknowledgement that some mysteries are content to persist without explanation, and that not all traces of history require immediate comprehension. Some things endure simply by being, reminding you that existence itself can carry significance quietly. Philip V's influence spreads steadily, shaping systems rather than narrative. Coordination between cities becomes predictable, and administration functions with a consistency previously absent. The changes feel practical, almost mundane, yet their quiet reliability renders them profound. You walk along roads that have seen centuries of travelers. People move with purpose, but without urgency, aware that the rhythms of governance have stabilized. There is no excitement, no grand display, only a shared understanding of continuity and order. Stability may feel boring, yet that boredom becomes a kind of security, a subtle gift of life moving smoothly under quiet oversight. The Peloponnese breathes evenly. Hills, plains, and coastal lines remain unchanged, indifferent to the shifts of human authority. Landscapes witness countless rulers without reaction. They persist in their natural rhythms, offering perspective beyond transient power. You pause near sun-warmed stone walls as evening approaches, the air cooling slowly, carrying the memory of the day's warmth. The aftermath of lives, including those of great leaders like Aratus, unfolds not in spectacle, but in subtle, enduring patterns, often shaped more by systems than by individual acts. The echoes around you are soft and uninsistent. They do not demand attention or judgment. They exist as part of the environment, fading gradually into the calm. Each sound, footsteps, distant voices, the whisper of wind across stones, reminds you that history's weight can be carried gently. Change does not always roar. It can move quietly, imperceptibly, leaving behind traces that sustain life and continuity without fanfare. You rise and continue your journey, carrying the image of the copper ingot and the spread of administrative order. The Peloponnese remains calm, holding change with the same steadfast composure it has always shown. The region's quiet persistence reassures you that the end of one influence does not produce chaos. The soft settling of authority can be just as meaningful as its bold assertion. Life continues, routines persist, and people adapt to changing circumstances. The structures of towns and institutions endure quietly, shaping daily life without fanfare. Through it all, the land itself remains steadfast, a patient witness to human affairs, offering grounding and continuity. Streets, walls, and fields hold memory and rhythm, supporting both change and stability. In this gentle balance between human activity and natural constancy, you find a sense of peace. Quiet echoes like steady governance, careful routines, and enduring landscapes can be as real, resilient, and lasting as any loudly proclaimed exercise of power. You move through a calm that follows long activity, a stillness that settles once the last footsteps have faded. The Achaean League now exists only in remnants, not through sudden collapse, but via gradual thinning, leaving a faint trace of former unity. What remains is memory, habit, and a quiet awareness that something once shared guided many paths. Coordination has faded, leaving daily life to follow local rhythms, with nothing demanding urgent attention. Historically, this is the period when the League no longer functions as a unified political force. Assemblies become rare, and intercity coordination shifts to formality. Decisions are increasingly local, guided by practical concerns rather than collective strategy. The dissolution feels natural, like a calendar left on the wall after the year ends, still useful for notes, but no longer shaping time as a whole. Walking through former meeting halls, you notice the cool stone beneath your feet and the absence of tension in the air. Silence feels neutral, even restful, as if a long routine has quietly ended. Endings, you realize, can offer relief rather than loss. Outside, columns line the public spaces, their surfaces smoothed by centuries of touch. A light rain enhances hidden colors in the stone, a soft greenish blue appearing briefly before fading. You pause, appreciating the quiet transformation. Uncertainty, when it does not demand resolution, becomes calm, even comforting. The rain continues lightly, and the town responds without concern. People adjust cloaks, seek shelter, and continue routines with calm efficiency. The League's weakening has no direct effect here. Life persists, untroubled by distant political shifts. You notice how alliances leave behind traces rather than ruins. Paths remain, customs continue, and shared language survives, even as formal unity dissolves. Footsteps of the old League seem absorbed into the ground, perceptible only to those who move slowly and listen attentively. Buildings once devoted to council work now serve new purposes with ease. Former assembly halls shelter conversations, storage, or rest. The spaces adapt without resistance, as if prepared for change from the start. This flexibility is practical and reassuring, a reminder that environments and routines outlast the systems they were designed to support. As the rain eases, the columns gradually return to their familiar color, and the damp stone emits a quiet satisfaction, like witnessing a fleeting trick of light. Beauty can exist without permanence or obligation, appearing briefly and leaving only calm in its wake. You continue along streets that once hosted delegates and meetings. The League's authority has faded, yet the environment remains steady. Fields are fertile, roads passable, and townspeople attentive to immediate needs. You recognize that stability often resides outside formal structures, in the persistence of ordinary life. Daily patterns continue without interruption, illustrating that human systems may change, while everyday life prefers consistency. The footsteps of old alliances leave no path to follow, yet they have shaped the ground beneath you, offering subtle guidance without demanding recognition. As evening approaches, clouds thin and light softens, returning the town to its usual rhythm. You slow your pace, allowing your steps to match the quiet surrounding you. Night gradually gathers. Stones dry and air cools. The world feels complete without the political frameworks that once defined it. History has softened into background texture, leaving only the calm sense of continuity. You walk forward calmly, aware that endings need not be dramatic. The quiet dissolution of the League teaches that life, stability, and human rhythm persist through soft transitions. You notice small signs of life persisting quietly. Birds flit between rooftops as they always have. Smoke curls from hearths, and faint lights glow through narrow windows. The echoes of past assemblies and decisions seem absorbed by the streets themselves. The towns retain memory without ceremony, their old structures holding traces of collective effort in worn stones and steps. There is no urgency, no need to reconstruct or lament. The world continues at its own pace. Objects within the town carry memory too. In a square, a worn fountain trickles steadily, water catching the dim light of dusk, functional and serene, a quiet witness to centuries of change. In a small citadel, you imagine copper ingots resting undisturbed, surviving decades as reminders that even the most inconspicuous objects hold stories without demanding attention. The landscape itself feels patient, able to carry both memory and adaptation simultaneously. Walking beneath arches and along worn streets, you sense the old paths guiding movement. There is no formal instruction, only gentle shaping by centuries of use. Residents follow familiar routines, trading, repairing, teaching while the land quietly holds past and present in steady composure. As night deepens, the town settles. Candles flicker in windows, casting warm pools of light onto the streets. Shadows stretch softly, and the air cools. The echoes of the Achaean League remain faint, perceptible only to those who listen closely. Yet daily life, natural rhythms, and familiar structures endure, grounding the town. Endings arrive gently here, leaving stability intact. Authority may recede, but continuity persists in subtle, enduring ways. Peace exists not in the absence of history, but in its soft integration into ongoing life. You move onward slowly, aware that quiet change carries weight equal to dramatic events. The fading footsteps of the League leave traces, not commands, shaping towns and routines. Life continues with rhythm, supported by streets, structures, and the steadfast presence of the land. In this soft aftermath, history shows that calm and continuity may emerge naturally, quietly shaping the world around you. As darkness settles, the Peloponnese exudes calm. Streets, fields, and buildings reflect imperceptible yet steady change. You walk unhurried, sensing both quiet dissolution and enduring continuity. Each stone, column, and path holds history's gentle touch, leaving you with a sense of completion, respect, and measured equilibrium. The Peloponnese, you realize, is patient. It allows change to arrive, influence to fade, and life to continue, all without noise or compulsion. Here, stability and transformation coexist quietly, and you walk forward aligned with the land's unhurried, enduring rhythm, carrying the lessons of subtle persistence, calm observation, and the quiet, resilient nature of human and natural order. You move through the late hours with a sense of deliberate calm, as if the land itself has decided to rest and time has chosen to slow. Greece, after the quiet dissolution of its alliances, enters a new period, not marked by proclamations or dramatic shifts, but by subtle adjustments in how cities interact. Daily life continues with a steady rhythm, even as the larger structures that once coordinated political activity gently loosen their grip. The absence of formal unity is not alarming. Rather, it allows local affairs to unfold with quiet independence. Neighbors negotiate, marketplaces operate, and communities maintain routine without requiring direction from overarching authorities. The pulse of life is measured, familiar, and undisturbed. Historically, this era represents a transition in which Greek regions adapt to changing political realities without the guidance of unified leagues. The Achaean League, once central to coordination, has faded almost entirely from practical effect, leaving behind memory, habit, and the subtle influence of precedent. Cities manage their own governance, attending to local needs with care and discretion. Shared identity, once reinforced by collective decision-making, gradually shifts into shared memory, a recognition of common history rather than a framework for present action. It feels like a chapter turning quietly, the page sliding forward without the audible snap of movement. You notice that life itself accommodates change, persisting through familiar structures, habits, and rhythms, even as alliances fade. You walk past temples that still stand, their columns steady against the darkening sky. These ancient sanctuaries have survived wars, upheavals, and centuries of human activity, leaving later generations to wonder at their endurance. Some accounts suggest that certain temples were built on parcels of land consistently avoided by armies, though the reasons are uncertain. You pause near one such structure, feeling the firmness of the ground beneath your feet and noting the quiet confidence of the building. Its stability does not demand attention. It exists calmly, as if time itself has left it untroubled. You realize that placement, circumstance, and endurance often matter more than strength or visibility. Mystery does not require resolution, and some phenomena are complete precisely because they ask nothing of the observer. The air cools gently with the approach of night. Crickets begin their steady rhythm, punctuating the soft hush of evening. The faint scent of stone warmed by the day lingers, grounding you in the present. Your breathing slows, matching the pace of the evening. The story no longer presses forward. It has settled into a state of quiet completion, like dust illuminated by moonlight, resting in place without urgency. Reflections on Aratus's journey, the Achaean league's fading cohesion, and the gradual reconfiguration of city alliances remain with you, complete and undemanding. The ancient world feels near yet calm, familiar without drama, like a well-known path walked slowly over years. The temples around you seem to observe rather than speak. Their silence carries patience and presence. Survival, you understand, does not always require exertion or resistance. Sometimes it is achieved simply by existing in the right place, by occupying a space through which the world passes gently, without challenge. You sense the same principle in the people who continue their routines despite the absence of formal authority. Markets function, families move through their days, and small civic gestures persist, leaving society intact without grand displays. Continuity, in its quietest form, is sturdy and reliable. As darkness deepens, small lamps glow in distant homes, casting soft, steady light. Their illumination is enough to mark presence without overwhelming the surroundings. You recognize a similar quiet in the landscape itself. Streets, plazas, and paths persist in their familiar rhythms, offering guidance without command. You feel grounded in this environment, aware that the slow, almost imperceptible changes in political power are absorbed and mediated by the steadiness of daily life. Authority drifts softly. Life continues with grace. You are present to witness the quiet unfolding of history without being pulled into its urgency. The story begins to whisper instead of narrate. You imagine yourself reclining on an ancient bed, its braided cords supporting your weight, aromatic leaves keeping insects at bay. The comfort feels immediate and real, even if it contrasts with modern bedding standards. Your mind and body settle into the rhythm of the night. Thoughts stretch like shadows beneath starlight. The roads, temples, and fields of Greece breathe evenly around you. Time and history no longer insist on attention. They exist calmly, complete, and unhurried. Your eyes grow heavy. The sounds of the night blend seamlessly into one another, smoothing the edges of thought. Nothing requires your understanding or intervention. The ancient night holds all that has passed with quiet dignity. You are free to rest within it. You drift into sleep gradually, unhurried and secure, carried by the familiar rhythm of breath and heartbeat. The world softens around you. Each inhalation and exhalation matches the gentle cadence of the land. The story, like the night, fades into presence rather than words. Its movement is subtle, patient, and enduring, offering reassurance that endings need not be dramatic to be real. You surrender to the stillness. Greece rests beneath a veil of moonlight and shadow. The old roads, the temples, and the enduring landscape persist alongside the faint echoes of past alliances. Daily life continues, untroubled by the past, and history exists as quiet memory rather than urgent narrative. Sleep comes naturally, like a well-trodden path inviting you home. In this way, The end of one chapter, like the passing of Aratus and the dissolution of the League, feels complete and peaceful, held gently by the calm, patient world that surrounds you. The night wraps the world in gentle stillness. Breathing slows, shadows lengthen, and history rests quietly in every stone, corner, and pathway. You settle into this calm, sensing the long story has softened, folded into quiet presence. The world endures, patient and serene, ready to continue without rush, its rhythm steady, unobtrusive, and enduring. End of script. Thank you for listening, everyone.